Hello everyone, welcome back to the Gaago Analysis Show. Joining me again is Aaron Kernan. Aaron, how are you doing?
Dean, good to catch up again.
You look like you're in work there, are you?
I am, yeah. And you look like you're not in work.
I can confirm that I'm not in work now. I'm in sunny Marbella. First summer holiday since my six-year holiday, 15 or 16 years ago. So long overdue.
Very good, yeah. So that's fair play to the Dubs for sending you away, just giving you the old retirement too in fine style.
It was part of my package, yeah. It was off you go.
As the settlement.
If you just leave, we'll give you a holiday in the summer. Yeah, that was part of the negotiations, yeah. So cut my contract a year short. Yeah, worked it well. No, look, nice to get away with the family. Last weekend, Dublin, Roscommon and Croke Park. Obviously, look, it was not the greatest attendance in terms of the game itself. It probably lended itself to maybe Dublin being a little bit sloppy at times, particularly in the first half, and find it hard to get into momentum and flow. But in fairness to Roscommon, they had a game plan that they stuck to and implemented really, really well. And it was perhaps the power of Dublin's bench in that second half. And look, it's an obvious tactic that Dublin are going to use now and going forward to try and hurt teams that don't maybe have that depth in their squad. And I just felt it was quite evident in that second half in particular, the impact the Dublin bench had. So look, I think Sean Bugler was first on, and I think when the substitutes come on, it's all about scores. But these guys are being told to come on, get double ups, get as many turnovers and get as many tackles in as they possibly can, because that's going to drive everything else. You see this one as well. Sean Bugler is just hunting the tackle. He eventually gets on the ball, turns it over. It's a free out for Dublin. That's his first impact on the game the minute he comes onto the pitch. From a management perspective, that's really pleasing to see him do that, and not just come on and look to scores, because the rest of that will follow in time. Again, here he is on the ball. Jack McCaffrey this time, hard angle cut from the wing. If Jack McCaffrey's coming on in games like this and he's being unmarked and he's given the room to run at the fences, he's going to get cheap frees like that all day, and then Dublin are going to be able to punish the opposition. So they're two real guys who come on obviously with a massive amount of pace. Here it is again. Sean Bugler, he found himself not being marked at any stages. Now, obviously, Roscommon were very much in a low block in terms of their defence, and we're sitting back nice and deep, which allowed the substitutes run at the Roscommon defence when they did come on. Again, picks off a really, really, really good score. And again, here you have Collie Basquel, an all-star from last year, coming on after 53 minutes. And Collie's game is all about pace, taking on players. And again, what he does, he just draws a lot of defenders to him. He's going direct. He's going towards the goal. He sucks in 2 or 3 of the Roscommon players, ships the ball back on. It's not on. But again, we work it back around. Bugler gets it again. He's free. They get a score. So I think from a management perspective, Desi be really, really pleased with the impact of the bench. And what that's going to do is just going to drive competition for places. It's going to keep standards really, really high in training, because them lads who got taken off now know that they're really under pressure. And it's not just, as I said, the scores earlier on. It's not just the tackles. It's the pressure on the kickouts. Jack reads this really, really well. On another day, Dublin get this ball back and it's actually a Dublin free, but probably touched on the ground by the Roscommon player. But it's just that sort of tenacity, that hunger of the players coming off the bench.
Yeah, it's interesting the point that you have with that is the buy-in from the players for them to still have that impact. It's all right management having these plans in place, but what they do, it's infectious, and you could see it all across the field. Like Roscommon, they're inside forward in, and we'll go on to did it a whole pile well, but their impact, and they brought on good players, was nowhere near as severe as what Dublin's was. So you've been there, what the mindset, the psyche is of those players, the pressure that's on to perform with any opportunity you get. But there's no doubt about it. It wasn't only the 1-2 that they scored from play, but you mentioned just the turnovers, just the positions and the awkwardness and the pressure they're putting in Roscommon was brilliant.
Yeah, and it's going to be something that opposition are going to have to plan for with Dublin. Look, I know there can always be late changes to the team and stuff like that, but you can be pretty sure that of those 4 guys that came on, McCaffrey, Paddy Small, Bugler and Basquel, the likelihood of all 4 of them starting is very slim. The there's probably only going to be one, if not two of them starting. So there's going to have to be plans for the other 2 or 3 coming off the bench, because they're just going to hurt. They're going to hurt teams so much if they don't have a plan in place. You just see here again, impact off the bench. Paddy Small drifts off into space. Will predominantly find himself inside, but he finds himself out the pitch this time because he's got fresh legs. Great ball inside to Conor Callahan, and Collie Basquel again not being tagged, gets in on the goal, and that's pretty much the game dead and buried there with 4 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go plus stoppage time. That thing brings it to 117-13. But yeah, look, very pleased. And then obviously the last goal. This is the standout one. You'll see all the substitutes heavily involved here. Just look at the pace in which they're attacking Roscommon. I know Roscommon are probably thrown in the towel at this stage, but you still have to be ruthless and to execute this. And this is something that Dublin would practice on the training ground in terms of those turnovers high in their own half, and then breaking at pace. Everyone running towards goal, no one running across someone else's path, and it's a great execution of a team move.
Yeah, that's one I would think of the whole day that would please Desi the most, because it all comes from hard work and forcing the turnover, but then they're not happy with that. They're not happy that this game's put to bed. They know I still need to do more to push myself into the reckoning for a starting place in 2 weeks' time. And like you mentioned, the pace and power that they're breaking at. And it is only simple hands, but how often do you see teams going and someone take an extra solo it or fumble it into a tackle? Everything they did was slick execution from the tackle to punishing Roscommon the other end of the field. And for me, that charge up the field from them, it was more of a psychological damage that they're doing to opponents, that if you're sitting looking at that going, Jesus, like look at the pace, the power and the hunger that they have whenever this game's over, that's going to be so hard to match. But I think it's something that definitely you guys have mastered this past decade or more.
Yeah, no, just even from the psyche of it in terms of Dublin now know that they're going to finish games strong, particularly if they got that reassurance in terms of the guys on the bench. If Dublin do go into games this year, like they did against Louth, they were behind at half time, but ultimately they knew that they had the gears, they had the guys on the bench to come on and get them over the line. And that might be the case down the stretch. Dublin might play a team where they might be 2 or 3 points down. But I think that confidence and that impact that we're seeing from Dublin's bench will obviously give the group a massive amount of confidence going down the stretch in big games, and opposition will be well aware of that as well. So that's why I just think they're going to have something in place from a tactical perspective to be ready for that, because that pressure is going to be relentless, and it could absolutely be the difference. But as we said, I think Roscommon were brilliant in the first half and did a lot of good things, particularly on kickouts and stuff like that. So I know you'd gone through it last weekend on TV as well, but you might go back over it there now.
Yeah, well, it was before the game started. We were all sort of assuming that Roscommon were going to go quite similar to what they did last year. Davy Burke came out fairly bullish in his pre-match interview with Gaago, and then it sort of put a bit of doubts in my head to say, geez, maybe he is going to go at it differently this year. He didn't want to be as predictable. Desi Farrell would have studied that game last year, particularly them keeping the ball for 6 minutes and then ultimately getting a score from it. That's maybe the vision he would have had in place. But to be fair, I thought an awful lot of what they did in the first half was brave. It didn't take a huge amount of tactical genius, but there was a couple of clips early on where they just started going route one, and Dublin had fairly much manned up one-on-one, leaving them really with no opportunity other than to go long. But you can see in that one, they had committed numbers to the foot of the break. This is the second one again. They end up with the ball, but Dublin straight away, they have the +1 back, but it doesn't put them off. Like these kickouts, that was one after another. Still nothing ends up coming off that, but he just continues with going route one again. And fortune favours the brave here. Like they take an awful lot of good luck in terms of getting their hand on that ball. But look what it works for them. It's a simple mark at the edge of the D. Like a breaking ball, an awful lot of it is luck. You just need to get people in the right place, get at the foot of a break. But after 2 against Dublin in Croke Park, most teams would probably change. But that's what Dublin wanted. They wanted them to go short to get the turnover to punish them with goals. But off the back of one mark from them going long, everything in terms of you've seen turnovers in defence, big hits, one-on-one defending here in this instance, winning it back. but it gives them front foot football to have.
It leads to contests, and
so it's contests for them. They're getting turnovers, but they were growing in confidence from it. Even the likes of this, a lot of teams would go slow and ponderous here. They get it to the wing. Dara Craig, head up, foot pass, perfect. Foot pass inside, draws another free, or fist pass, another free inside, and that's a tap over score for Jeremy Murta again. So like everything that they were doing was playing with sheer confidence. And for me, an awful lot of it came of how they started the game in terms of just going long, trying to get on the front foot as soon as they could. And that first score, a lot of luck for the ball to break to one of your players heading towards the Dublin goal. But if they didn't force that ball long, or if they didn't take that risk, for me, you would just play it exactly into Dublin's hands, and the game would have been over as a contest in the first half. So I thought an awful lot of what Roscommon did was suiting the players, the calibre player that they had, because it fed an inside lane with long, direct, early ball. They could win it on the inside. They drew 4 frees in that instance, which shows you the pressure that was on a Dublin full back line, but also the players coming on the loop. Some of the points that they kicked from distance was
I think they were 90% in the first half. They were 9 out of 10.
They were, and there was some of them just weren't that easy either. But it was the confidence, it was conviction. You know yourself, if the confidence is up and you take on with shots, but it's how they set up. Like if they had to went up to try to do the same as they did last year, there were lambs to the slaughter again. I know they did get a draw last year. I would actually take more confidence if I was them from what they did last week, and because it gives you something genuinely to build on, instead of last year it was bunker down and try and do whatever we can do, to get some sort of a result.
I don't think many would have thought that it'd be 16-13 after 65 minutes, or thereabouts. And so like they very much were in the game, and they only scored 4 points in the second half, which is obviously something that they're going to have to look at going forward to the Mayo game. But I think it was just that the Roscommon bench didn't obviously have the impact that Dublin bench had. There were still some really good players coming off the bench for Roscommon, but just 1 or 2 shots. I know Ben O'Carroll had dropped short. I think Ultan Harney missed a mark. So there was a couple of chances where they could have kept the scoreboard ticking over, and then who knows what would have happened, a little bit further down the stretch.
Those scores give the impact subs confidence, that I'm on now and I'm adding to the team, and it gives everyone that bit of an energy lift, where once they missed them and they dropped them short, you could just feel the confidence starting to drain, the energy starting to drain from them. And we've shown the clips of Dublin punishing them in terms of that there. But an awful lot of what they were doing, like I said, on their inside lane was flying, but it's very rare that you will see Enda Smith being tagged with someone of the calibre of John Small, or being able to keep him out of the game. He generally is the player who is making those breaking runs that draws Fitzsimons or Merchant, and it's a pop pass over the top and then a goal on the inside lane. The fact that he wasn't getting away from John Small at all, that was my fear at half-time, was as well as they were doing, all their scores were coming from the inside lane. Dublin were obviously going to make changes and shore that up. And where were the scores going to come to keep the scoreboard ticking? Ultimately, they didn't. Dublin got their matchups and their changes right at halftime. But for me, you don't rip up the script if you're Roscommon and go back to what they did in that Dublin game last year. You try and build and develop it this weekend as they go into the Mayo game. And I think if they do, they'll put themselves in a great position to win the game. But as a spectacle, I think it will lead to a much better game, because Mayo will try and go toe-to-toe with them as well. And so definitely it's one to look forward to see what way they go about it this weekend, because I felt the first game against Mayo in Hyde Park in the Connacht Championship.
Missed a lot, didn't they? They just kind of missed a couple of chances,
They did, but sometimes whenever you're sitting back, Dean, or you're more worried and concerned about another team, to me that doesn't fill me with massive confidence, because I'm going out with an inferiority complex thinking, well, the manager thinks they're better than us, or we can't go out and express ourselves, or we can't leave ourselves too exposed. So you don't really commit to it. So if you don't commit to a tackle, you don't get it. If you don't commit to a shot, you don't score it, where if you're half-hearted going and stuff or unsure, it doesn't come off. To me, they went with an awful lot of conviction in everything that they did in the first half, and it's something that they can definitely build on.
Yeah, no, I think they've got the players to mix it with Mayo. That was evident, obviously, in the championship game. And yeah, I think they'd be quite confident going into that game, particularly for that first 65-minute performance with Dublin. So, no, look, it looks good. And it looks like Sam has gone back to Donegal.
Yeah, do they have to write a new song, or can they go back to the original Jimmy's winning matches?
I don't know. Things are
not
good
sure
though.
I'm not sure they're getting that carried away yet. But I have to say, we throw a few clips here. I was up at the game, and even from the Ulster final, obviously, where I'd seen them live, I'd seen them in all their games live this year. But I was really impressed with them last weekend. They had a huge crowd out, huge support. But I just remarked on co-commentary, it was sitting pretty much similar to the Ulster final. In the Ulster final, in 51 minutes, Armagh were 15-11 up. On 52 minutes, the score goes over here from Kieran Thompson, and it puts them 15-11 up. And I remarked, has the 2 weeks now, has the confidence from beating Derry, Tyrone, Armagh, has it really catapulted them to be a different team? And without doubt, what I've seen from them in the last 10 minutes or 20 minutes showed me that this is a team hugely motivated, hugely confident, but unbelievably well drilled. Like Niall Morgan's a top. Like just look at him. He doesn't know where to get his kick out away. Like in real time, you have to remember the crowd's building here. They're getting on his back. You know, everything is uncertain. They're forcing that long whenever they were 4 points up. They end up, they win that ball and go straight through and get another score again. How many times now do you see teams in this position dropping off, trying to mind their lead, trying to see the game out? Now, ultimately, Niall Morgan gets that ball away. But again, it took him time to get away. Look at the pressure. Look at the men chasing them. Yeah. They're not standing back ahead of the ball, waiting on Tyrone or inviting Tyrone onto them. They went after them at every opportunity. And you've been there before. You know yourself. In big games, that doesn't happen by chance. This is something that is drilled into you night after night for months, that this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to win the game. And defensively, defending kickouts, chasing people back, they were superb. But just look at the energy levels from Peter Morgan, who ends up getting man of the match. This is late on here. The pace that he goes at, the angles of running that they all have, one-on-ones, anything, you name it. They got the better of every single Tyrone opponent, and they were
it's like they're not playing looking at the time on the clock. They are just playing until they're told to stop. It's like we're sprinting for the finish line. There's no case of look, we're just going to sit back here and fight pressure on ourselves, because it does no good to anybody. Like we would have done it years ago against Mayo, and we ended up getting caught. That game went to obviously extra time and we lost, but we start playing football inside our own half, going back to our goalkeeper, going around our 14, 21 yard line, and just invited so much pressure on us. So Dublin have obviously learned a huge amount from this, but as you said, this is just a total mindset from Donegal in terms of we're not stepping back here. And obviously if you flip it on its head to what Armagh had done in the Ulster final, it's just poles apart, and you'd like to think Armagh would have learned a huge amount from that game, and going forward that they'll kind of try and do the things that Donegal are doing here in terms of getting massive impact from their bench and springing guys a little bit earlier to get that impact to match the opposition, and bringing players on as well. But I think Donegal they're a massive threat. There's the buzz up there. I can only imagine what it was like up there in terms of, it just seems like they have a huge amount of momentum, and it's not just the momentum of the crowd and the Jim McGuinness factor and stuff. They're actually playing really, really good football. They're scoring highly. You know, their defense looks quite competent. You know, they're keeping teams to not too many scores, and obviously keeping out goals. So they're definitely a massive threat. And probably the next couple of games maybe gives them the luxury to maybe change up the squad a little bit. I don't know if Jim McGuinness will do that, but it might just allow them to be a little bit fresher come the All-Ireland quarter-final. But
before we finish up on that one, Dean, to elaborate just a wee bit more, because that's something that I always found you couldn't give enough credit to your Dublin team or to Limerick hurlers, for instance, at the moment, is Kilkenny hurlers back in the day were brilliant at it, where they played regardless of the time. You know, they didn't care about what was in the scoreboard, what the time was. They were relentless about sticking to the game plan, and it's probably easier said than done. You know, you can't help whenever there's pressure on the lane by looking at a scoreboard or looking at a clock. But in terms of if you're trying to develop that within a squad, is that something that you clearly speak about in meetings?
There's nothing better than being ruthless in that sense, in terms of just continuing to add on scores and scores. It's just a mentality thing. If you're 5 or 6 points up and you've got loads of energy, loads of legs, you want to go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in front. It's just, that's always what we want to do. We were never a case of, look, we're 4 or 5 points up here, we need to just relax, there's only 5 or 6 minutes to go here. It was just it's just a pure mentality to just keep going to the very end. And
you don't want the game to end. You want this to continue. That's the bit that frustrates me, where at times I think management, some players are overthinking games, overthinking situations, trying to plot and plan for everything. Where that's what makes Gaelic football so great to be part of. Like, you can't plan for every second of it. And to me, I think too much now is going into playing the clock. Like, the end of that Ulster final, there was arguments because the 3 minutes of added on time wasn't called out until 2.5 minutes into added on time. So both teams then were going mad, going, but there should be more time, because what they're trying to do was play the clock down. And that's the bit I'm trying to think of, the mindset that you're coming at. That is what makes, now granted, you said unbelievable players and managers and all that, but it's the mindset that you've had to just continue to go after it. And the same with Limerick. Go back to them in the All-Ireland final last year against Kilkenny, who were unbelievable in the first half. But once they got their foot on the throat, there was no such thing as, let's get this game over and done with. It was, let's put this to bed ourselves by being relentless in everything we do. Like, it's always easier to run and tackle whenever you're ahead. Like, the more you sit back, the more you give momentum to another team, you're leaving the door open to give them a glimmer of hope. And that's what I think has been incredible about how you went about things, Limerick.
The only time going down the stretch that you'd maybe slow down the game would be if you've got a free kick and you take your time so that you could actually get set on the kick out then, and guys could get a little bit of a breather. But that was the only time. Every other time you were sprinting for the finish line. And there's some guys coming off the bench in those games that might have only been on the pitch 6, 7 minutes. They want to play more and more. They want to get as much as they possibly can out of that game. So they are demanding the ball, they're hunting down tackles, and they're driving the team forward. And that's why it is a 20-man game now. And that's so important, the bench to kind of have that mindset in terms of they're coming on to finish this game. They're the matadors. They're the ones that get to stick the knife into the bowl. And that's essentially it. That's the mentality. That's what you need to be successful.
Well, McGuinness was brilliant at that, and I've noticed again this past 2 days, between the 50th and the 60th minute, just like you mentioned with Desi and the Dubs, he's rolling his bench. He's getting his 5 subs on within that 10-minute period, but it's not necessarily the scores that they're getting. Granted, Doherty kicks the beautiful spinner point off the outside of his boot to draw the Ulster final, but it's the energy, it's the work rate, it's the turnovers, it's the going from 21 to 21 that they're really adding in that period, and that's what's driving them.
Legs. That's just it. Get up and down the pitch, and that's where he's got one place in his mind, and that's Croke Park. That's where he wants them guys really opening up in them open spaces, particularly when the game goes down the stretch. So, look, it's an interesting time. Obviously, another weekend, the championship this weekend, but the big guns are starting to, flex their muscles a little bit. You're starting to get an idea of who might be in it come the stretch. And look, obviously, big games this weekend, obviously Armagh and Derry in particular. So I'm sure you'll have a keen eye on that one. And hopefully if Armagh are 4 points up going down the stretch, that they won't take the foot off this time.
That'll be a handy day for us. Easy win, no problem.
Right. You heard it here first, everyone.
One to look forward to, surely, and one that in that group, it'll go a long way to deciding if we're going to be in the shake-up, because it's obviously a huge game against Galway coming down the lane in terms of it would be a table topper. So it'll be, it's definitely starting to turn into moving time in every group.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, plenty more to look back on next week. But Aaron, thanks again for joining, and thanks everyone else for tuning in. And be sure to follow up with the hurling show. I'm back to the sun now, so I'll chat to you soon.